Smooth sentences edit challenge, let's get started. The meaning of a smooth sentence is the last letter of the first word is going to be equal to the first word of the next letter. So you can see these two A's are the same, these two, and so on, and that returns back true. But the one that returns back false is the E and the I are not equal to each other, and so is the S and the O, and so on and so forth. So now we understood the challenge, let's get started with the code. So the first thing to do is to be able to break down these test cases into words. So the best thing to do is to use a split function on the string sentence. So we can start by making a string array called words and make that equal to our parameter dot split, and then we can have a character in there which is just our space. So it'll take all of the spaces and break these down for us. So position 1 of words is going to be Marsha, position 2 is going to be appreciated, and so on and so forth. So what we can do is create a for loop going from int I equals 0, and I is going to be less than the words dot length minus 1. And we can go through using I++ because we want to go up in ones. So basically inside this for loop, what we want to do is retrieve the word we're up to and the next word, and then compare these two characters and go on all the way to the end. As soon as we hit a match where these two are not the same, then we can exit the for loop by doing return false, and then after the for loop finishes, if we've never hit the return false line, we can do a return true at the end. So if we finish the for loop and we haven't hit the return false, which means that every letter has been equal to each other, then that's all good and they can hit the return true right at the end. So let's write the data inside here. So what we want to do is break this down by word and by letter. So we want a string, we want a current word, which is going to be word square bracket 0. That's going to give us the first one. But of course, because we're using a for loop, we want to be able to use these indexes. So we want to change the 0 to I, which will give us the word that we're currently up to inside the for loop. So it'll be Marsha, appreciated, deep, perpendicular, and so on and so forth. So from that word's I, we need to extract the last character. So we can say char, and then we can do current letter, and we can say the current word, square bracket, the current word, dot length minus 1. So the reason why we need to do minus 1 is the same thing for our for loop. If our string has 5 letters, the length is going to be 5, but because it's all 0 base, it's going to go from 0 to 5, so we do minus 1 to bring this down 0 to 4. Because 0 to 4 is 5 positions, but 0 to 5 is 6 positions. So in order to extract the last letter, we need to do minus 1 from the length, because the length is going to be 1 more than we actually need, because our strings are going to be 0 based. So now we've done that for the current letter, let's duplicate this and do the same thing for the next word. So instead of the current word, we can do next word, and then instead of I, we can do I+1. So this one can be Marsha, and the next word is going to be appreciated because we've added 1 to the index. And instead of current letter, we can do next letter, and then current word here, we can do next word. And then in these square brackets, this one's going to be really easy because it's just the first letter of the word, so the index is simply going to be 0. So now that we've retrieved the current letter and the next letter, these are the two variables that we need to wrap the condition around. So we can say if current letter is not equal to the next letter, then we can place our return false inside here. So what this does is, it will go through the for loop, grab each of the word, grab the letter. In the case of the current, it's going to be the last one. In the case of the next letter, it's going to be the first one. And then do a comparison against them. If they're not equal to each other, we're just going to return back false. If this entire for loop finishes and it doesn't find any matches for this condition, then it's going to return true and it's going to succeed. We do need to bear in mind that sometimes you get capital letters, but we'll deal with that in a second. So let's check that first. So as you can see, it's actually passed the majority, but it hasn't passed all of them. So what we want to do in this case is wrap around the lowercase. So inside our current letter and our next letter, we just need to make them 2 lower. So we can simply just wrap this around and just put 2 lower inside the brackets and do the same thing for this one. Just to get rid of any potential capital letters that we might be comparing, because we don't care about the case sensitivity, we just care about the letters matching. As you can see here, we have S and a capital S. So even though this one is going to be true, it's not actually going to work. We have 2 A's, 2 S's, 2 M's, 2 N's, and 2 D's. But because we have a lowercase s and a capital S here, this condition is going to fail because these two are not technically accurate. But because we're going to do 2 lower on both of them, then this should be a lowercase s and also a lowercase s. So if we check that now, there you go, everything's passed perfectly. So let's just do a quick little recap. So we have a function called isSmooth that takes in a string sentence. The first step is to create a string array called words and split our sentence up by the space. That's going to be helpful for us because we have space inside here, which is going to be a normal sentence. So we can break up each of the words inside this string array. And then we're going to go through all of the words inside our for loop. First, we're going to grab the first word that our for loop is up to, denoted by words square bracket I, to access the first one, and so on and so forth. And then because for the first word we need to grab the last letter, we will do the current word string, take its length, and then -1. And the reason for the -1 is because in this example we have 5 characters in this word. This is going to go from 0 to 5 if we just do the length. But because our strings are 0 based, we want this to go from 0 to 4. And 0 to 4 is 5 positions, but 0 to 5 is actually 6 positions. So if we left out the -1, we're going to get an out of bounds exception. And then we do the same concept but for the next word. So we take the next word and we add 1 to the index that we're currently up to, which will give us the next one. And retrieving the letter is really easy because we just use square bracket 0 to give us the first one. We don't need to do any calculations because we don't need to figure out the last position, it's just simply the first one. And then we just write a simple if statement that says, if the current letter is not equal to the next letter, then we can return back false. And all that really means is, if this A is not equal to this A, it's going to return back false. So you're going to go through in this for loop and do the same thing for every single word inside the string array. Once we've done that, if none of the lines hit return false, it's going to get to the end and return true and give us the value for our function. Thank you for watching, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'll see you in the next one.